Hello YouTube, it's Supernova, back with more Explain 11. The Cessna 172 Skyhawk is a 4-seat, single-engine, high-wing aircraft. First flown in 1955, more 172s have been built than any other aircraft in aviation history. The pitot static system supplies ram air pressure to the airspeed indicator and static pressure to the airspeed indicator, vertical speed indicator and altimeter. Pitot tube cover, remove. Check for pitot blockage. Pilot operating handbook, available. Aeroplane weight and balance, checked. Verify that weight and balance are within limits. Parking brake set. Control lock remove. Fuel selector both. The fuel selector valve should be in the both position for takeoff, climb and landing. Operation from either left or right tanks is reserved for cruise. When the fuel selector valve is in the both position, unequal fuel flow can be expected if wings are not level during cruising flight. Fuel shutoff valve on. Fuel flows from the reservoir tank through the auxiliary fuel pump, past the fuel shutoff valve, and through the fuel strainer to an engine-driven fuel pump. Ignition switch off. Engine ignition is provided by 2 engine-driven magnetos and 2 spark plugs in each engine cylinder. The engine is normally operated on both magnetos, with left and right positions used for magneto checks. Avionics master switch off. The split rocker switch controls power to avionics bus 1 and avionics bus 2. Power is supplied from a primary electrical bus. Master switch on. The left side of the split rocker type switch connects the belt-driven 60 amp alternator to the electrical system. The right side connects the 24 volt battery. With the alternator switch in the off position, the entire electrical load is placed on the battery. Continued operation with the alternator switch in the off position will reduce battery power low enough to open the battery contactor, remove power from the alternator field, and prevent alternator restart. The battery side of the switch can be turned on separately to check equipment while on the ground. Fuel quantity indicators, check fuel quantity. Ensure low fuel annunciators are extinguished. Avionics master switch on. Avionics cooling fan, check audibly for operation. An avionics cooling fan is installed on the left side of the interior firewall. A single electric fan cools the center stack radios. Power is supplied through the avionics fan circuit breaker. The fan operates whenever the master and avionics master switches are both on. Avionics master switch off. Static pressure alternate source valve off. The static pressure alternate source valve is used if the external static source malfunctions. This valve supplies static pressure from inside the cabin instead of the external static port. If incorrect instrument readings are suspected due to water or ice in the pressure line, the alternate static source valve should be pulled to the on position. Annunciator panel switch, hold test. Flaps extend. Pitot heat on and check. Verify power load on the ammeter. The ammeter gauge indicates the amount of current in amperes from the alternator to the battery or from the battery to the aeroplane electrical system. When the engine is operating and the master switch is turned on, the ammeter indicates the battery charging rate. If the alternator is not functioning, or the electrical load exceeds the output of the alternator, the ammeter indicates the battery discharge rate. Pitot heat off. External lights on. Operation of all lights should be checked if a night flight is planned. Left wing navigation and strobe light checked. Landing and taxi lights checked. Right wing navigation and strobe light checked. Tail navigation light and beacon checked. External lights off. Master switch off. Baggage door checked, lock with key. Secondary static port checked. Tail tie down, disconnect. Horizontal stabilizer checked. Elevator checked for free movement. Elevator hinges checked. Trim tab check security. Rudder and hinges checked. Rudder cables checked. Tail navigation and beacon light checked. Antennas check for security of attachment and general condition. This is the VOR antenna. Flap check for security and condition. Check both flap tracks, push rod and rear of the flap. Aileron check freedom of movement and security. Check aileron hinges, push rod and counterweights. Wingtip checked. Strobe and navigation light checked. Wing leading edge checked. Front and rear air vents checked. Wing tie down, disconnect. Fuel tank sump quick drain valves, drain. Drain at least a cup full of fuel from each sump location to check for water, sediment and proper fuel grade before each flight. If water is observed, take further samples until clear. Main wheel tyre, check for proper inflation and general condition. Fuel quantity, check visually for desired level. Fuel filler cap, secure and vent unobstructed. Engine oil dipstick filler cap, check oil level. The aircraft should not be operated with less than 5 quarts. 8 quarts is required for extended flight. Engine cooling air inlets, clear of obstructions. Propeller and spinner, check for nicks and security. Air filter, check for restrictions by dust or other foreign matter. The engine air induction system receives ram air through an intake on the engine cowling. The air filter removes dust and other foreign matter from the inducted air. The air passes through an airbox, a fuel air control unit, and is then ducted to the engine cylinders. Nose wheel strut and tyre, check for proper extension of strut and general condition of tyre. The oleo strut should have at least 4 inches of extension. Left static source opening, check for blockage. Fuel quantity, check visually for desired level. Fuel filler cap, secure and vent unobstructed. Fuel tank sump quick drain valves, drain. The purpose of the fuel tank vent is to replace fuel drawn to the engine with air. A vent line connects the fuel tank vent to the right fuel tank. Excess fuel can also leak through the fuel vent. Fuel tank vent opening, check for blockage. The stall warning is a hole and reed system. When low pressure occurs around it, for example at a high angle of attack, suction is created which vibrates a plastic reed in the cockpit. The stall warning will sound 5 to 10 knots before an aerodynamic stall occurs. Stall warning opening, check for blockage. Wing tie down, disconnect. Landing taxi lights, check for condition and cleanliness of cover. Front and rear air vents, checked. Main wheel tyre, check for proper inflation and general condition. Wingtip checked. Strobe and navigation light checked. Aileron, check freedom of movement and security. Check aileron hinges, pushrod and counterweights. Flap, check for security and condition. Check both flap tracks, pushrod and rear of the flap. Pre-flight inspection complete. Brakes, test and set. Circuit breakers, check in. Avionics master switch off. Fuel shut-off valve on. Avionics circuit breakers, check in. Throttle open 1/4 inch. Mixture idle cutoff. Propeller area clear. Master switch on. Flashing beacon on. The following steps are required when starting a cold engine. Auxiliary fuel pump switch on. Mixture set to full rich until stable fuel flow is indicated. Then set to idle cutoff position. Auxiliary fuel pump switch off. Ignition switch start. Release when engine starts. Mixture advance smoothly to rich when engine starts. Throttle maximum 1000 RPM. Oil pressure check. Minimum oil pressure is 20 psi. Maximum oil pressure is 115 psi. Normal operating pressure is 50 to 90 psi. Engine failure may be indicated if the low oil pressure annunciator illuminates and oil temperature rises. Mixture lean for taxi. Leaning the mixture decreases the proportion of fuel in the fuel-air mixture supplied to the engine. As air density decreases, the amount of fuel required by the engine decreases for a given throttle setting. Flaps retract. Navigation lights on as required. Avionics master switch on. Radios on. Transponder standby. A flight transponder is an automated transceiver which emits an identifying code in response to a received signal. ATIS obtain.
Nice code d'Azur information Foxtrot. 1000 Zulu weather. Wind 150 at 5, visibility more than 10. Sky clear, temperature 17, dew point -22. Altimeter 2997. Arriving runways 22 left, 22 right, departing runways 22 left, 22 right. Advise on initial contact you have Foxtrot.
Altimeter set. Heading indicator set. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe.